Summer can be a bit of a slog. For us, it's often for some reason a rather busy time, and I'm sure we're not alone.
Well, you can beat the summertime sadness and the August angst and enhance your everyday with our excellent sponsor, Via Hemp. This is a company that crafts award-winning premium THC and THC-free gummies.
Each of these gummies is especially designed to cultivate a specific mood. Whether you're looking to get relaxed, get quality sleep, get creative, or just to get focused. If you're 21 or older, you can experience it for yourself and get 15% off your first order with our exclusive code MSheet at viahemp.com. That's VIIAHEMP.com.
I personally enjoyed their grapefruit flow state gummies. This CBG and CBD powerhouse really helped me tap into my productivity. Like, we have had an extremely busy summer, and I feel flow state got me over the finish line a few times when I was editing multiple episodes a day, digging through documents, and knocking out a bunch of interviews.
Via Hemp does not require a medical card, and it ships legally to all 50 states. It's also affordable, and even more so for Murdersheet listeners who get a special deal.
If you're 21 and older, head to viahemp.com and use code MSheet to receive 15% off. That's VIIAHEMP.com and use code MSheet at checkout. After you purchase, they ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. Enhance your everyday with Via.
This season, Instacart has your back to school. As in, they've got your back to school lunch favorites, like snack packs and fresh fruit. And they've got your back to school supplies, like backpacks, binders, and pencils. And they've got your back when your kid casually tells you they have a huge school project due tomorrow. Let's face it, we were all that kid. So first call your parents to say I'm sorry, and then download the Instacart app to get delivery in as fast as 30 minutes all school year long. Get a $0 delivery fee for your first 3 orders while supplies last. Minimum $10 per order. Additional terms apply.
This episode is sponsored by AutoTrader. Credit scores, down payments, interest rates. Car buying can be a numbers game, but you don't have to be a math expert to get the keys to your dream car. Just use Kelley Blue Book My Wallet on AutoTrader. Crunch your numbers and get your personalized results so you know exactly how much you'll pay each month for your car. It's like having a magic wand for your wallet. Presto! The car you've been wanting is now within reach. So hit the road and leave your calculator at home. Find your next car on autotrader.com.
Content warning: this episode contains discussion of murder and sexual violence.
Well, it's Friday, so it's time for another edition of the Cheat Sheet, and we found some interesting cases that we would like to discuss with you, some ongoing cases, and there's also been a couple of updates in the Richard Allen Delphi murders case that we also think are worthy of chatting about.
My name is Anya Kane. I'm a journalist.
And I'm Kevin Greenlee. I'm an attorney.
And this is The Murder Sheet.
We're a true crime podcast focused on original reporting, interviews, and deep dives into murder cases. We're The Murder Sheet.
And this is The Cheat Sheet, Raps and Recantations. All right, let's start off with some familiar territory, namely the Delphi case, specifically the case against Richard Allen, who's been accused of murdering teenagers Libby German and Abby Williams.
And this is going to be really, really familiar territory because we're going to start out by discussing a filing that Nick McClelland recently made. Of course, he's the prosecutor in the case. And this is actually the third time he's made this filing.
Wow. Okay, there you go.
And this is a request for specific medical records pertaining to Richard Allen, particularly Richard Allen's mental health records from the time that he's been incarcerated in the Indiana Department of Corrections. Ordinarily, of course, there's all sorts of privacy regulations that certain health records should not be shared with the public or with prosecutors. Prosecutor McClelland makes the argument that there was a reason that concern shouldn't apply here. He believes that through filings and other such things, the defense seems to be at the very least hinting or suggesting that Richard Allen's mental health is going to be an issue in the upcoming trial. Particularly that he feels that the defense may be trying to use Richard Allen's mental health as a way to explain away the confessions Richard Allen made in this case. In other words, they're going to suggest that those confessions were false, presumably because of some sort of mental health issue. And his argument is if they're going to be arguing about his mental health, we should have access to the mental health records so we can judge whether or not those claims are true about his mental health.
That makes sense. And this is one of those areas in the case where I've always been a bit fascinated. In the beginning, when this first came up, when the issue of confessions or incriminating statements first came up behind the scenes, not in public, but essentially immediately after he made incriminating statements to his wife and mother, Richard Allen's attorneys basically kind of came out with a filing saying being in prison has had such a detrimental effect on his mental health. They threw around clinical terms like schizophrenic and psychotic, and it's very hard to analyze those without having a mental health professional say, okay, here's what we're seeing. Schizophrenic, that doesn't really make any sense. That wouldn't really manifest itself in a middle-aged man. That comes on earlier in life. But psychotic, there can be a number of reasons that someone could become psychotic suddenly. So it was very interesting. Then they kind of backed off on that and put in, when explaining the incriminating statements, well, he may have been threatened by Odinist guards. No, we don't have any evidence for that. And he's never said that, but maybe. That struck me as a team that is desperate to get around the mental health issue. And so that really piqued my interest because why? I think mental health sounds like a pretty compelling reason that somebody would say something that's not true. But the fact that they kind of discarded that, I'll be curious if they end up going back to it. Because again, it's a better explanation, but it's very intriguing that there's kind of this like keep away game going on with mental health in this case. Like, oh, that's it. Oh, never mind. That's not it. And obviously McClelland is still very much determined to get those records. And if the defense essentially feels that like we really don't want him to get those records, then they'll, I imagine, have to really be careful about how they talk about mental health in future filings. It kind of boxes them in.
Now, let's take a pin in that for a second, and we're going to get back to all of that. But let's jump back a couple of weeks to February 26, 2024. And on that date, Richard Allen's defense team filed an ex parte motion seeking payment for them to get the services of experts. And those experts were not identified on the court docket. So, first of all, let's talk about what ex parte means. When a public defender takes a case, that's different from when a private defense attorney takes a case. And when a private defense attorney takes the case, they may hire all sorts of experts to explore all sorts of theories and to investigate all sorts of possibilities. And maybe some of those theories will come out in court. Maybe they will talk to an expert and decide, well, this particular theory doesn't really fly, and we're not going to use that. But because they're using their own funds, all of that is going on behind the scenes, and the prosecution is not aware of it. Now, what's different is when it's a public defender, they're paid for by the state. And so when they're talking to experts and such, they need to get approval for that from the judge. You don't want to penalize someone for not having the money to go out and privately hire their own experts. Just because the fact that a person isn't rich doesn't mean that the prosecution should get a glimpse at their defense strategy. And that's why you have these ex parte things, which basically means that the defense can file a motion that the judge sees, but the prosecutor doesn't see. And in these motions, they may say, well, we're talking to such and such an expert who knows all about this particular area that we think may be pertinent. We need court approval to get funds for them. And you don't want the prosecutor to know that. That might tip your hand to the other side about what sorts of defenses you are considering. So if Anya is charged with stealing 10 boxes of cereal.
Thank you for the continuity nod. Thank you.
Anya is charged with stealing 10 boxes of cereal from the grocery store, and her defense team gets permission from the judge to consult an expert who specializes in the defense that women who are married to lawyers / podcasters are driven so crazy with stress they can't help but create petty thefts. That would be, if the prosecutor knew about that, the prosecutor would say, oh, this is the strategy they're going to use. Maybe I could talk to other witnesses, or I can talk to this expert and discredit this. And you're giving the prosecutor an advantage they wouldn't have in a normal situation.
Or wouldn't it be like if they talked to an expert who is supposed to say that, but then they didn't call them as a witness, then the prosecutor would be like, I'm going to go talk to that cereal expert because obviously that didn't go well.
Because there's nothing. Obviously, at some point, the defense is going to have to turn over a list of everybody who's going to actually testify in the trial. They don't have to turn over a list of everyone they've talked to. So if the prosecutor knows, oh, they talked to this witness who's an expert in this subject, and they're not using this person as a witness, maybe that's an area of vulnerability that I should explore. So for all of these reasons, we have these ex parte filings and communications that are done outside the purview of the prosecution. So back on February 26th, there was this entry in the docket that the defense had filed a motion about expert witnesses. And as we've explained here, it didn't specify who those witnesses were, what their specialty was, or anything of that, because that is something that was supposed to be kept secret. At least that's typically what occurs. And so I mention all of that because Nick McClelland, well, why don't we read a little bit of this filing?
Sure. The defense has now filed a verified ex parte motion for hearing on funding for expert services. Within that motion, the defense asked the court to approve funding for Dr. Polly Westcott, a clinical psychologist, and for a confession expert. The defense states the conclusion to be drawn from this is that there is a reasonable basis upon which to inquire into the impact of the accused's confinement on his mental state. This can only be done by an expert in the field of the impacts of solitary confinement on accused individuals. It is clear from this statement and the other affirmations made in the motion that the defense intends to challenge the multiple confessions that the defendant has made while incarcerated. Further, it is clear that the defense intends to make the defendant's mental health an issue in this matter. In order to address this, the state needs to review the defendant's mental health records and have an opportunity to consult its own expert.
So, what?
What?
It appears that prosecutor Nick McClelland had access to this ex parte motion. And he is quoting from it. He's naming the expert they wanted to use and discussing why they wanted to use this expert. And so that raises some interesting questions. I presume there's good answers for them, but how did Nick McClelland get access to this ex parte motion?
Yeah, I'd be curious from hearing from attorneys who could shed some light on this. Is this really weird? Can we not figure this out? Or would there be reasons that one side, the state could see an ex parte filing and not be okay to roll with it? So I don't know. It seems definitely not what we would expect with an ex parte filing, but maybe there's something we're missing here.
Because again, typically the whole point of going through the motions of filing something ex parte is because there's stuff in here we don't want the other side to see. And Nick McClelland saw it.
Yeah, so again, if you might have any insight on this, let us know because we're really confused.
Getting the smile and confidence you've been dreaming about, all from the comfort of your home, isn't a total mystery with Byte clear aligners. Just don't be surprised if all your friends start asking, "What's your secret?" Begin by ordering your at-home impression kit today for only $14.95. Byte clear aligners are doctor-directed and delivered to your door. Treatment costs thousands less than braces, plus they offer flexible financing, accept eligible insurance, and you can pay with your HSA FSA. Get 80% off your impression kit when you use code WONDERY at Byte.com. That's BYTE.com. Start your confidence journey today with Byte. What makes a life a good one? Is it the adventure you have? Or the friends you find along the way? Maybe it's pursuing your passion while striving to protect, defend, and save what you believe in every single day. So what makes a life a good one? In the Coast Guard, we think it's all of the above and more. But you'll have to find out for yourself. Visit gocoastguard.com to learn more.
Yeah, it's peculiar. I know certainly there are some defense attorneys who've already made some public statements that they find this very unusual and strange. I wonder what prosecutors think. We'd really be interested in getting the full range.
Yeah, is there some way around ex parte where you could do something like this and say, hey, we know what you're asking for, and here's why that means that we need something in return? I don't know. It's just very odd. And also fascinating that the defense is pivoting back to mental health discussions, although in fairness, it seems like from at least what we're reading into this filing, it seems like they're trying to thread the needle in a very limited capacity, not necessarily speaking to, the whole of his mental health, but maybe just specifically the element of solitary confinement, things like that. So they're trying to be a little bit specific about it, I suppose.
Yeah, and also, in fairness to the defense, we don't know what the contents of this ex parte motion is. We don't know if they intend to call these people as witnesses in the trial, or if they're just asking the court to pay them for services already rendered. It's entirely possible they talk to this expert, and this expert has stuff that's really pertinent to the case that they want to use. It's also possible they hired this person, talked with her, and found out that, what she says isn't really helpful to us. We don't intend to use her. We don't know.
We don't know. Also, it's possible that some of the experts could speak to, the idea of somebody being scared into confessing by coercion. And that is going to be what their topic is. Less mental health being an internal factor and more of an external force saying, we're Odinist, we're going to kill your family, confess.
And so there's also been another filing in the case that I think is worth mentioning, at least briefly. This comes from David Hennessy, who, of course, is representing attorneys Brad Rosie and Andrew Baldwin in the contempt hearing, which is scheduled for March 18th. Previously, the judge had issued a ruling that the defense needed to turn over all exhibits and such they intended to use in the hearing on March 7th, 2024. And in this motion, they're asking for an extension of that time for another week. And the reason they are saying that is there's actually a couple of reasons. One is that the prosecutor, they're not casting aspersions on Nick McClelland for this, but they're saying that for whatever reason, there's some stuff that we need from Nick McClelland that he hasn't gotten to us yet. We expect to get that from him relatively soon. But if he gives us these things, we may see something in them which may inspire us to create a new exhibit or something to highlight. And so we want time for that. And then there is also an interesting paragraph in this document that I think is worth quoting in full.
On February 29th, 2024 and March 1st, 2024, the defense was contacted by two separate individuals who claimed to have documents pertinent to leaks. Despite diligent efforts, the defense has not yet obtained these documents to be able to assess their credibility and reliability. Upon doing so, the defense may have additional exhibits, which of course will be provided to the state as all others have been.
So I think one thing that jumps out at me from that is they say that these documents are pertinent to leaks. They're not specifying that these documents are pertinent to the specific leaks under discussion in this case. In other words, this may or may not apply to the leak of crime scene photos and defense strategy. It may apply to something else altogether.
And reading between the lines, David Hennessy is not going to present, here's other evidence of Andrew Baldwin leaking. This is going to be coming from either law enforcement or the prosecutor's office, I would imagine.
And certainly there are always rumors swirling about in the Delphi online community.
Really? Oh, man, I didn't know that was a hallmark of that community.
So it would be interesting to see what these documents are, if it's some of the stuff that's been spreading, the rumors that have been spreading, or if it's something else altogether. Or it's possible that the defense will get these documents and say, well, there's nothing here. So this may be the only time we hear of it, or we may hear a lot more from it. Again,
hard to assess without knowing what it is, but if they're not able to get the documents in a timely fashion, one questions, what exactly is this? Because usually if somebody's coming forward with some good stuff, then there's not really a problem with exchange.
So it's frustrating to keep on saying we don't know, but we don't know.
We'd rather tell you guys we don't know something than to be like, yeah, this is definitely this, and then, be totally wrong and misleading you. So, Delphi is one of those things we're all just kind of, on this roller coaster together, and we're sort of trying to pick out what's blurring past our eyes as we're going on it. So that's kind of how it is.
So let's move on. The next case that we're going to talk about involves a man named William Franklin. Our sources for this are NBC 10 and the Philadelphia Inquirer.
As well as court documents.
This, as I said, this case involves a man named William Franklin, and actually involves a murder that took place all of the way back in October of 1976, when a man named Joseph Hollis was shot in a pool hall during a meeting between two drug syndicates. And there was a witness to that event named Emmanuel Clayet. I'm guessing on that pronunciation. Apologies if it's incorrect. And in exchange for getting lenient treatment from the prosecution, he provided testimony indicating that the man responsible for the murder was this William Franklin. And so Franklin ended up being convicted of this crime back in 1980. Mr. Clayet made a statement on video before he died in 2020, where he claims that he was persuaded to take this deal because police were offering him all sorts of inducements, including the opportunity to have sex with his girlfriend. And so a judge has now said that these things cast so much doubt on Clayet's testimony that I'm going to vacate the conviction. Franklin still has a murder charge against him, but he's been released from prison, and it's now up to the district attorney to decide if they want to have a new trial in this case. But meanwhile, the prosecutor in Philadelphia is saying, wait a minute, we shouldn't be putting so much stock in Clayet's recantation of his testimony. It was not done under oath. He didn't face any perjury charges for it. He didn't come into court and face cross-examination. And basically, he just read a statement, pretty much word for word, that was written for him by a defense attorney. So it's very difficult for us to look at this and just accept it blindly that his testimony is untrue. And so the conviction should be reinstated.
I'm no fancy lawyer, but it seems like the recantation has a lot of red flags there. And I'm kind of shocked that a judge would put so much weight on it.
It does have a lot of red flags. If you don't come in and face cross-examination, it's really tough to evaluate it. The man is deceased. We don't know what kind of health he was in, But if he's just reading a statement given to him by a defense attorney, how confident can we be that that statement is true?
Not confident at all.
Should we be concerned that maybe he was offered inducements to give this?
That's what I was gonna say. I mean, listen, I'm all about the scrutiny of these older cases where there could have been police misconduct or evidence, that's not as slam dunk as it was portrayed as being looked at. I just don't know if that's. I just think, I don't know. The judge's decision on that is pretty baffling. I think a lot of this would carry a lot more weight had it been done differently and under oath, and perhaps in his own words, he described what happened. So I don't know. I'm not saying necessarily that he's lying during the recantation. It just seems really hard to assess throwing out an entire case based on this.
Yeah, I'd really like to see more information. Obviously, I don't want innocent men to be in prison. No one wants that. But I just think a lot of these claims should be given a lot more scrutiny than they often seem to be.
Yeah, I think that there can be a real, maybe in some cases there can be a real rush to side with the prosecutor and police. And then in other cases, there can be a real rush to, get a bunch of nice headlines about, wrongful convictions being vacated. I think that's also a competing impulse that's not always in the service of justice. That's just my opinion. I think, I don't know, the job of a judge is to be very skeptical of everybody. And this doesn't really fly with that. Was there other stuff that was it basically the recantation that did this?
The recantation seems to have carried the most weight. I really love our criminal justice system. I believe the way to get true truth is by having both sides present their best case, have witnesses cross-examined and such. And so it's troubling to me that this didn't happen here, and the witness just seemed to be quoting from a script provided to him by a defense attorney, and he never gave that under oath.
One thing I also feel, and this is maybe just my hot take, but with older cases, especially non-high-profile older cases, but sometimes high-profile ones as well, there's almost this attitude of well, we can do whatever because the families are dead of the victims, or it's not going to get that much attention. I don't know. They almost is no one's watching. Don't worry about it. We can do whatever we want. That's something I feel I don't know if I don't think that's necessarily a malicious impulse. It's just, maybe just a kind of a reality that, there's not going to be that much outcry oftentimes.
I'm also interested in issues such as sentencing disparities. This man has been incarcerated for 44 years for this murder. Is it typical for people who have been convicted of murder in the Philadelphia area to receive such long sentences? Is there something unusual about this case? I'm also interested in that.
What was his behavior like in prison also?
That's also a good question.
Yeah. So there's definitely some interesting stuff to unpack there. And again, it's not really even commenting on guilt or innocence at this point. It's how is the system functioning? Is it functioning as it should? So for this next case, we need to go down to Georgia. For our sources for this, we relied on reporting done by 13 WMAZ, as well as WGXA, Fox 5 Atlanta, My NBC 15, as well as a rap music video on YouTube. So on July 6th...
There's a reason for that.
Yeah, there's a reason. Obviously.
Our standards aren't slipping that badly.
We're going to give you the crime as filtered through a Taylor Swift music video. No, it actually comes up in evidence and in an interesting way. So on July 6th, 2019, in Warner Robins, Georgia, there was a rap concert at Club Boss. One rapper who was there was named, his rap name is NoCap, and his real name is Kobe Vidal Crawford Jr. And he's from Mobile, Alabama, and he's an up-and-coming rapper. So, unfortunately, things did not go well at Club Boss. There was some kind of confrontation between different people and the club security out in front, kind of the breezeway. That confrontation involved a 23-year-old man named Morgan Baker from Alabama. He's part of NoCap's posse. And he and another unidentified person have a scuffle between security and them. Then what the state alleges is that they went back to a van in the parking lot, got firearms, went back and started shooting. A witness even saw Baker firing a gun. Unfortunately, those bullets did hit somebody, a man named Tamarco Head. He was a bouncer for the club, and he was killed. He was 39 years old when he was killed. And unfortunately, according to 13 WAMZ, family told them that Head's relative had recently also died at a shooting at some apartments. So the family was going through a lot at that point. On November 13th, 2019, Baker was arrested and extradited to Houston County in Georgia. There was ultimately a trial in 2022. The trial involved witness testimony, as well as the prosecution showed the jury a clip from a NoCap music video for his song Ghetto Angels. So in the Ghetto Angels music video, Baker can be seen holding and waving about a semi-automatic pistol. And I'll explain what exactly can be seen in this video in a moment. But the jury saw that, and they deliberated for an hour and then found him guilty of murder and several other charges, I believe. So what happened recently, this latest update, is that the conviction of Baker has been overturned because the Georgia Supreme Court felt that the jury should not have been shown that rap video. It didn't have anything to do with the crime, and it may have really biased them. So they've thrown out the conviction. Now it's up to the prosecutor to bring charges again and redo everything. But I guess, first of all, there's been a lot of discussion about rap lyrics, typically. In this situation, a rap music video, but rap lyrics being used in cases. What do you think about that?
It makes me uncomfortable. I'm sure this won't come as a shock to our listeners. I don't really listen to a lot of rap songs, but I certainly enjoy music and lyrics and storytelling. And I think it would be a mistake, for instance, Stephen Sondheim wrote a terrific musical about presidential assassins. Some of those songs are from the point of view of assassins. And it would be a mistake to take those lyrics and say, oh, this proves that Stephen Sondheim wants to kill presidents.
Get him.
There's lyrics in some of the songs there from the point of view of John Wilkes Booth, where racist lyrics and ideas are expressed. And clearly those don't reflect Stephen Sondheim's views or opinions. They represent the views and opinions of the character he is writing the lyrics about. And so the creation of rap lyrics is a work of imagination, and it shouldn't be read as, in my opinion, as confessions or as sworn testimony. What do you think?
Yeah, I tend to agree. And given, rap is tied to the African American community, it's tied to the Black community. It seems a bit like, why are we holding rap to that standard? I mean, if you look at rock and roll, right, which, maybe isn't as culturally dominant as it once was, but if you look at the heyday of rock and roll, some of the lyrics there can be pretty sexual, right? Can be pretty raunchy, talk about, getting with ladies or whatever. And I mean, nobody was like, we didn't have people necessarily like using that as like, oh, you wrote that or you like that, so therefore you must be guilty of like some sort of sexual crime, right? Sexual assault. And that would seem ludicrous to most people.
And this rap video was filmed at some date prior to the murder, so there's no connection between it, other than at some point prior to the murder he held a gun and was acting tough with it in a video where other guys were acting tough with it.
That's correct.
And that's part of rap videos. Sometimes a certain element of rap videos, people want to look tough and brandish weapons. It doesn't mean that is what their real lives are
yeah,
like.
And I'm certainly not saying that Baker is innocent. It seems like witnesses had him holding a gun shooting. I mean, that's pretty bad. I just don't think, you should be including stuff that's prejudicial to a jury even if somebody, likely did something. Because again, as you said, it's not real life. It's a music video. I mean, to me, like when it comes to lyrics, when it comes to writings, if maybe in some very specific cases that the details of the crime really are reflected in something to the point where you're like, well, how would this person even know this if they weren't involved? Maybe there's some room there for including them. But I think just in general, when it's being almost feels like it's being used to be like, look, this guy's inherently violent because he's holding a gun in a rap video. I mean, I don't know, like that. People post pictures of themselves holding guns on Facebook and stuff. I mean, it's kind of, maybe it's a machismo thing, but it's not evidence that a person committed a specific crime. I mean, again, unless you're holding the literal murder weapon and you can prove that, I don't really know how it's super relevant.
Yeah, if an actor like a Harrison Ford holds a gun in a movie, that wouldn't be used in a hypothetical trial against an actor.
In my hypothetical rap music video that I'm definitely not making, if I'm like sitting on a throne and like there's a bunch of cereal boxes piled up around me, and then I'm accused of stealing cereal, to use the classic example, I don't really see, like, because maybe I bought all those legally. You don't know. I mean, like, unless you can prove that those specific boxes were stolen, why should that have anything to do?
It's probably just you in your mind think that all this cereal
makes me look really tough.
Yeah.
I look pretty cool. Yeah. And so, if I'm doing that, like, I don't, again, like, I can understand why that's interesting to prosecutors. Wow, this woman is obsessed with cereal. But there's a difference between being interesting and being relevant enough and fair enough to include in a trial. There's a high bar that you have to clear to have stuff be in a trial.
And punishing people for creative works, and rap is a creative work. Punishing people for creative works makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah, because again, like, you can have an artistic persona. I mean, in this case, this is not the rapper. This is a guy part of the rapper's entourage who's just in the video. So it's not even like his vision. He's just a guy hanging out. It seems problematic, and I feel like
I many years ago, this is how old I am, I was in the background of a scene from A League of Their Own, and would somebody try to use outtakes from that to show that I have an unhealthy interest in female baseball? Oh, Kevin seemed really happy at this particular play. What does that mean? It probably means I was doing whatever the director told the crowd to do.
Yeah, that's another really good point. This guy's not even the creative visionary behind this. He's a person who works for a rapper who had a vision for a music video, seemingly, or maybe the director did, I don't know. And they did that, and whatever. It's way too much of a stretch to really go with that in a court setting. And again, there has to be a high standard of what you present in court. You can't just necessarily, like, this feels very prejudicial because it's just like, look, he's waving a gun. Isn't that scary? Don't you think he probably shot somebody? Yeah. Go with the evidence. Go with the concrete things that are proving that he did it at the scene. Because, otherwise it just, I don't know, it gets into some very uncomfortable territory for me, especially, again, it feels like targeted against the African American community in a way that's like, are we holding any other musical genre to this standard? So just to give you a sense of the NoCap music video for Ghetto Angels, you see Baker from about 5 seconds in to about 10 seconds in. He's wearing a black hoodie, which has the words, "The resurgence and loyalty is love" on it. He's kind of sticking out his tongue like he's concentrating. His eyes are half closed. And he holds up in his right hand a semi-automatic pistol, blocking part of his face with it. His trigger finger is against the barrel of the gun. And then he shakes it at the camera, sort of like he's shooting the video's viewers. Then later on, he shows up and a bunch of people are holding guns. So it's not just him. He's not the only gun guy. But the other kind of bizarre twist to this music video is that the lyrics of the actual rap seem to be alluding to the murder of two men, 27-year-old Willicious Willie Moffett and 28-year-old Carlos Cunningham, who were both killed in 2019 in Mobile, Alabama during a confrontation over a dice game. And so NoCap is essentially mourning his friends. You can see their posters. You know, he's basically saying, I miss my friends who were killed with gun violence. So it is a bit ironic that they are holding guns in the video. But it also is kind of, I don't know, it's like the spiral of gun violence because, I mean, obviously those two young men shouldn't have. This was over a $40 game. Like, this was over nothing that these guys lost their lives. So he's mourning them. They are holding guns. That is a bit ironic, but it does show you that, you know, unfortunately, this gun violence is a scourge. And I just thought that was interesting to point out because I was like, wait, what are those names that they're kind of like standing near these posters for? And I looked it up and it was another murder. So unfortunate, but interesting.
Well, with all of that said, I can tell you're interested and eager to get back to your throne of cereal.
I'm actually literally going to eat a bowl of cornflakes after we are done with this. So you're not wrong. You're not wrong. You're making fun of me, but you're correct.
I know I'm correct. I live with you. I see the furniture you've created for yourself, all the cereal themes.
Why did this become a thing? I don't even understand. Oh my gosh. We're so silly. But yeah, no, I'm definitely going to eat some cornflakes. But yeah, this is interesting array of cases we talked about today. Hopefully between all the bizarre serial anthology of my serial killing crimes, hopefully everyone was interested. But I do really want cornflakes right now.
Thanks so much for listening to The Murder Sheet. If you have a tip concerning one of the cases we cover, please email us at murdersheet@gmail.com. If you have actionable information about an unsolved crime, please report it to the appropriate authorities.
If you're interested in joining our Patreon, that's available at www.patreon.com/murdersheet. If you want to tip us a bit of money for records requests, you can do so at www.buymeacoffee.com/murdersheet. We very much appreciate any support.
Special thanks to Kevin Tyler Greenlee, who composed the music for The Murder Sheet, and who you can find on the web at kevintg.com.
If you're looking to talk with other listeners about a case we've covered, you can join the Murder Sheet discussion group on Facebook. We mostly focus our time on research and reporting, so we're not on social media much. We do try to check our email account, but we ask for patience as we often receive a lot of messages. Thanks again for listening.
You've worked hard to build your brand, so why settle for one-size-all-fits branded clothing? Lands' End Outfitters creates apparel your employees will truly want to wear that unites your team in comfort and style. It's why Lands' End Outfitters has been a branded apparel supplier to some of the world's most respected brands for more than 30 years. From logo polos to fully customized branded wardrobes, our world-class outfitters will partner with you to help your team feel confident on the job and put your brand into action, all backed by above-and-beyond expertise. See why Lands' End Outfitters should be your branded apparel partner. Go to business.landsend.com/pod20 and use code POD20 for 20% off your first product. That's business.landsend.com/pod20. Code POD20 for 20% off your first product.